Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you'd like to continue with me, then please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Devin Halliday. Hi, Devin.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing fantastic today. I'm so excited to be on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell me a bit about you.
Well, a bit about me. I spent the early part of my adult life navigating my way through the U.S. military and the Navy. Specifically, I was in aviation and worked my way out of that into leadership roles for 18 years in the corporate world here in the U.S. and rose through several different levels and layers of leadership where I really found those things that ignited me and ignited teams, and ultimately decided that my next step was to go help more people in more places achieve the type of success and build the type of cultures that I was surrounded with and had the great fortune of building throughout my career.
That sounds good. So that sounds to me a bit like a mission. Would that be right to say that?
Yeah, it is. So my personal mission, if I characterize it in one way, it's to unlock and develop the potential in others so that they may do more in the world, right? That's the value that really I've aligned myself with, and my mission has been to do those things.
Now, I love that because it's a bit similar to mine in the way
I love your mission. I love it.
What do you like about it?
Just a few things. The idea of eliminating the kind of old habits or old methods that got us as a culture and society to where we're at and through business where we're at. Bureaucracy. It's been a useful tool through a period of time, right? Personalities have been a useful tool, but there's a layer past that. And that's the part that I love about your mission, is it's about elevating past that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, Socialized Mavericks is all about making sure that they and others around them work for the greater good. So I can certainly see some alignment there. How did you get to that point? Because you said you started off in the Navy.
Yeah, so I started off in the U.S. Navy. Ultimately, for me, I have kind of a literal maverick moment, and here, I'll tell you what I mean by that. So as a child, my grandfather used to take me to air shows, and I'd see the Blue Angels fly, which is the U.S. Navy's flight demonstration squadron. It's just really impressive to watch them do their thing. And so I got really fascinated with naval aviation. And then the movie Top Gun came out, and that character Maverick, right? He was the kind of bad boy, yet you knew he wanted to do good. And he just had his own way of going about things that pushed against the bureaucratic grain of the U.S. Navy in a way that, the movie pictured, painted him as a bit dangerous sometimes, but as somebody who was able to then set out and accomplish things that nobody else was dreaming of being a reality. And so that was kind of inspiring to me. Those two things really helped recruit me into the Navy. They really did. And in the Navy, I wasn't a pilot, but I did make sure the planes got in the air and stayed in the air. And for me, that was an important piece of just kind of being around that environment, that culture, and learning from the systems that the military has in place. Now, granted, there's a great deal of bureaucracy. There's a great deal of hierarchical leadership. Those things are important in a military setting, right? You have mission-oriented, mission-first mindset. And so obviously to have those rules in place that don't necessarily value the people as much as they value the process, important in a strategic situation like that. So for me, then, once I got into the private sector and civilian world out of the military, it was about taking the best qualities that existed within that framework, but then adding the human dynamic. And let me be very candid. I was horrible. I mean, awful as a first time manager and leader of people in the civilian world, because I was so stuck in some of the military kind of ways. And it took building a great team around me who was willing to share with me how much they disliked some of the things that were happening. And because that communication was so strong and that the connection to the team was so strong, they were able to give the feedback to me and felt comfortable doing it. And I, of course, felt like I owed it to the performance that I was responsible for and to the people that I was leading to make adjustments. Yeah, it's not like it's this magical formula and you're just perfect at once. And anybody who tells you that is probably a savant or not telling you the truth.
Yeah. Also, I think leadership is, I think you can have a natural flair for it.
Oh,
But
sure.
even if you have a natural flair for leadership, it's still honed by experience and knowledge as well. Because I think it's a big difference between leading as a child and then dealing with the complexity of leadership as you get older.
Oh, yeah, without question. And I mean, I know that you have the great fortune of interviewing and talking with a lot of accomplished and tremendous leaders. And I would imagine, I mean, you tell me, is this a story that comes up, fairly frequently, that there are these big bumps early on where you really start to hone in and refine who you are as a leader?
Yes, and I think the most common is that you start leading when you're young, really young.
Right.
Whether that is because you're the oldest and your parents are all working and you've got two siblings that you have to make sure they're fed and they're looked after and you've done your chores and your homework, and your parents are gone all day long and then they come back in the evening tired and you might have cooked them dinner too.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you're almost like miniature adults, and those that don't buckle under it but learn to lead is the ones that turn out to be great leaders, because they're always looking to continually hone themselves. I think it was really interesting because I've had on the show now two people from the Air Force. So one in the US and one in the UK, and now there's you. And there's certainly what the others have said to me is that this kind of layman's perception of armed forces, where you get told what to do, then you do it regardless, is kind of doesn't really exist anymore. There's a much more of a collaboration and recognizing of the individual. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I would say so. When I got out of the military in 1999, so I would say that I was on that transitional cusp in many ways, where you could see elements of that starting to show up in the structure, but kind of the old guard, so to speak, still was the folks who maybe were involved in the military and in the military kind of Vietnam or post-Vietnam era. So they were really brought up in a very structured and rigid system. Certainly that mindset and mentality was still there. So I do understand and know that it has gone through some evolutions and changes, which is great, because really, as much as anybody in the military is still mission first and serving that ultimate purpose, they're still individuals with an individual set of values and purpose, individual thoughts, background, cognitive diversity that they could bring into a conversation that can elevate either a tactical approach to a mission or an operational approach to something as simple as, what we called field daying or cleaning up your space.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So one of the things you said in your mission was that you wanted to develop the potential of others. What does that really mean in the real life for you?
Yes, in the real life, what that means is first the unlocking part, and that's those aha moments, those light bulb moments, those moments where a person who doesn't necessarily see their capabilities, part of my role and responsibility, and fortunately for me, something that seems to have been more of a natural rather than a developed piece, is to be able to identify in others things that they don't see in themselves as capabilities or as potential for them in the future. So the first part is to unlock that, make them aware of it. Now the develop the potential part of it is where in my former life, that was through a lot of coaching, right? Leadership coaching down to my folks. In my current life, it's still coaching, but it's coaching and developing and working through human systems first, and then process-oriented systems within the organization second, on how they apply this thing that they start now to realize that they have. And the biggest trick I'll tell you that I found is, while I might be able to share with somebody what I see, once I'm able to help a person I'm working with not just hear it from me, but go through a few steps to set a goal, look at a stretch assignment or project that maybe they thought that they weren't qualified for, couldn't take on, and work with them on the actual steps to achieve it. And then they get that, they achieve it, they meet that first goal, and they realize in that moment, that's the developed part. They realize in that moment, I've got this. And then so my ultimate step is to have them now not just have me working with them to help them realize and see how capable and incredible they are as leaders, but instead see that in themselves and see those opportunities and know how to apply this new skill or this new characteristic that they really didn't understand or fully develop, how they can apply that themselves. That's the mission. That's the part that really lets me know that kind of my work here is done for now, and we'll move on.
Okay, so is it the aha moment that they get? Is that the bit that drives you?
Yeah, so the aha is the first bit that really excites me is when we have that synergy together, and they see that I wasn't full of it the whole time, that I was actually giving them the right deal. And then the part that really drives me though is when the application of this capability comes to some crossroads where an incredible outcome exists. That's the part that really, really drives me, because again, that's when I know that not just identifying it, but applying it is in their wheelhouse, and they're doing it now on their own. And I can kind of step back and appreciate and watch.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things you said was about the human, did you say the human systems first? Is that what you said?
Yeah, people systems first.
Yeah, so what do you mean by that? How do you develop the people systems?
So, yeah, I wrote a book called Belogingness Factor, and in the book, there are 5 characteristics, is how I've identified them as the people-centric systems that as a leader, you really have to be excellent at, and the best leaders are excellent at when they are able to create environments where people thrive. And so the quick version of those, and we can go into any depth that you want on any of them, but the quick version of those is first and foremost to be able to self-analyze in an incredible way, and then to be transparent and have that authenticity. So authenticity is kind of the single word I would use for this particular characteristic. However, I believe it's an overused word. I believe people maybe misapply how they use it. So I go a little further in explaining that it's really about the capability and skill to analyze yourself, to know what your pluses are, know what your deltas are, be transparent about being human, and that you're going to continue to give your best, do your best, grow, improve, and lead people in a strong way, but that you're a person and there's going to be some work that you do along the way. So the most important thing is to just model what you expect out of yourself and out of your people in an authentic way, but being able to really self-analyze. And of course, a big part of self-analyzing is knowing that you have to be able to ask for input as well, that oftentimes you are going to be harder on yourself than other people are, but you may have blind spots, right? Yeah, so the other 4, again, quickly, are around empowering and championing the causes of others, giving ownership, right? Giving a voice. The next people piece is around value alignment and making sure that there's clear definitions of what the values are, what the roles or behaviors that support those values look like for you as an individual leading people, but also for those people that you may be charged for leading. They have to know the script, so to speak. And then the last 2 are the 2 that really are about the outward focus and realizing how much the shadow of a leader impacts and can build or destroy confidence and collaboration in others. And the one is to build that cognitive diversity, bringing multiple perspectives into solving challenges and problems, right? Encouraging an environment of constructive dissent where people can just, I don't know, they can feel comfortable going against the grain before a project maybe, gets off the rails. They see something and you've created an environment where they can share it. And then the last is to foster that community or collaboration environment where people are willing to go beyond the mission. And so when you have that perspective of really those three critical things for you as a person and the systems as a person, a leadership person, the authenticity, the championing others, the value alignment, and then you can look out at those places where you really affect it with people and teams, building that intellectual diversity and fostering that collaboration and community. That's the people systems, I mean.
I love those. Absolutely. It's like, I'm like, yeah, I was just like taking notes and going, that really works. And I love it.
Hey, listen, I would love to say that I came up with all of this on my own and nobody's ever done it. But the truth is that I'm glad that I didn't come up with this on my own. I'm glad that I've been able to study and examine and learn from the best brands and the best leaders that are out there, apply these things myself, but also to know that there is just such a proven track record of great leaders who really go into kind of a zone in their mind and take full accountability and ownership of a direction they want to go, even if it's not popular, but they know that they have these systems in place first. They can bring a team with them and they can achieve great things.
Yeah, what I suppose in some of it, I was looking at that as, because I think like a socialized maverick is the best leader. And I was looking at those and going, yeah, they do all of this stuff. Because I agree with you in terms of authenticity. In some respects, I hate the word because people say it and they don't actually really mean authenticity. They mean it in some sort of manipulative, marketing, masky way.
Yeah.
And which really irritates me. But when you say it, I'm like, yes, that is what I would say authentic. It's that ability, as you said, to know yourself and to know others and where you fit into the world. And I mean, like when I do leadership, because I know that you do leadership training at times as well. And if I say to somebody, what you should do as leaders is regularly or semi-regularly speak to your employees and ask them how you're doing as a boss. And they just look at you like you're crazy.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
Like, why would I do that? Because I'm like, how are you going to develop if you don't know? Or they will say something like, well, I've done that. And they told me I'm great. And I said, well, how many times do you do that? Well, I asked them once. I go, well, of course they're going to say you're great. They don't know how you're going to react. You might sack them.
Right.
I said, they're not going to tell you the truth until you've talked about 6 times. And each time, and the time that they tell you something, you don't, have a fit.
Yeah, you have to do something about it. Even if you don't see it as a potential issue, they're giving you the feedback that, hey, this is something that we would love to see you make an improvement on. Address it. By the way, and the reality is what? Like sometimes people are going to say, let's say it's something mundane. Hey, I wish you would give me a schedule that always gives me off, every other week. Of course, if your business structure does not allow for that, of course you're not going to do that. But that's usually not the type of feedback you're going to get when you are vulnerable, you're open and transparent, and you've done it multiple times to where you're getting real feedback now, not the kind of complaining, low-hanging fruit. Let me say something that won't offend her. Yeah.
Because one of the things I give an example was that when I was in an organisation, and I was head of HR and constantly being asked by, the other directors, phone, can you come in my office in a minute? I'll talk to you. So I was constantly not at my desk. And I didn't realise that was irritating. And one of my staff came to me and they said, Jude, we know you're busy. We know you're not skiving, but you're never here. And it's a real problem. And I was like, is it? Because I knew that, I knew everything was working fine. So productivity wasn't a problem. And what they said was, other managers come and ask us where you are. We don't know where you are. We want to protect your time and protect you as an individual. And we don't know what to tell them. So it's causing us issues. And I thought, that's really sweet, actually, because that's really to me rather than them. And I said, okay, it's not going to change. I'm still going to have those moments where I have to dash off. But what I will do is open my diary so you can see everything that I'm doing. And if I have to dash off quickly and I can't amend my diary, I will tell one of you. I'll tell this named person, and they'll just go and stick it in my diary. So then you'll know. So that solved the problem. Didn't mean that my behaviour, the ultimate behaviour was going to change. I still needed to dash off, but it did mean that I was putting in place a more effective system and showed them that I cared about them and their feelings and acknowledged how they cared about mine.
Yeah, and it's simple, effective, perfect. It addresses the underlying part of it, which is not the fact that you're not at your desk physically and they can't physically talk to you in that moment, but the underlying part of it of we have question. We don't know. We want to be supportive. We want to honor, and we can't. So that leaves kind of this, that there's a value alignment that is misaligned. And what a simple solution.
Yeah, and it was really affirming for me to realise that actually I had a team that, one, could look after itself, but two, actually did want to ensure that I was okay.
Yeah,
often
that I have a similar story to that as well. At one point, when I was leading folks in conference calls like crazy, and I would have to close my door at times, and so I just made sure that every scheduled conference call was on this little dry erase board on my door. So if my door was closed, it was posted up there so that they would understand what's going on. And I had kind of a knock or do not disturb little code next to it, so they knew, hey, it's a conference call that, hey, we could knock on the door and come in and still address, or hey, this is one where we don't disturb. And then I established or set up somebody who was a lead on the team who could take care of, and I would trust any of their decisions that they made in my absence,
exactly.
To be able to make decisions on my behalf. And so it was a great system.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's empowering, which is your next one.
Correct.
Which is good. And again, I think a lot of leaders are worried to empower other people because they think that they will be seen as not needed.
Interesting. So why do you think that? Because
I've seen it. Either when I was in corporate life working with people and having to say, you need to let someone else do that, or if I've been training or mentoring other people, and some of the kickback you get is, when you dig deep enough, it's like, if I empower my team to do this in my absence, my boss will think I'm not needed. Yeah.
Okay. So I have so many questions for that mentality, and I have encountered it, myself with others as well. So I have definitely seen it, but that's somebody who lacks some confidence and sense of purpose in what they're doing is my initial kind of, gut reaction, is that they lack confidence in the value that they bring. And I'll tell you, as a person who's led people who lead people who lead people, right? I absolutely just, do backflips when I have a person on my team who has created essentially an obsolescence of themselves for the direct work product that their team is responsible for, meaning they've empowered their entire team to be able to make the decisions and drive the output. And the reason I do backflips, and I love this, is because now I have a leader that I can work with, or I can have their direct supervisor work with on those next stretch things that they want to accomplish or do in their career. Even if they're happy with where they're at and they don't have maybe upward aspirations, then that's where we get to learn about what they're super passionate about. Maybe they're a veteran. Maybe there's somebody who champions specific causes, and I can bring them onto maybe a committee we have for community outreach, or another committee that we might have for diversity in the workplace, and they can start to do work there that helps the bigger and broader part. So I love having those moments, and I realize that is not the common perception at all. And that's what I want to work to continue to do, is to help people shift their mindset that is an asset to your company. That's not an expendable person. They've developed the capability of their people to such a high degree, and the confidence of their people to do it, that as long as we do this the right way, and it doesn't look like, hey, we've just kind of taken your boss out of here, he's still your boss, but not doing anything from your perspective. As long as it doesn't come off that way, and it comes off as, or it truly is something that is having this greater impact and aligning with the values of that person. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, because I remember walking into a new HR team, and they were very inefficient in their processes. And I was trying to make it a lot more lean. And then somebody said, because it's always been that, it's always been that inefficient, like seriously inefficient, like a little bit. Like, what's the point? And I said, look, HR, you have the part of HR runs on a cycle, because there's certain things has to happen at certain periods of time. But for the rest of the time, you can have a lot of fun doing some really interesting stuff. But if you're spending your entire month on this cycle, don't you find it boring? I'm like,
Right.
it's boring, because all you're doing is setting up payroll or setting up recruitment, or you're not doing anything that's kind of fun. No strategy, no let's try this new thing, no innovation. And once they realised that I wasn't trying to just make it more efficient, but there was a reason for it. Because I mean, they was getting lots of complaints by the managers, lots of complaints by the directors, lots of complaints by the staff, the other employees, and it's like you can eradicate all of that if you don't make this a whole month process, because it shouldn't take longer than a week and a half. So in a week and a half, they're going much fucking better the rest of the time. And it was that kind of shift in the mindset.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I thought our job was to do this cycle. It's like, oh, no, that's the least I want you to do. It's important, but no, I don't think hardly any time on this bit. This is the bit I want you to go to. And they're like, oh, wow, yeah, let's get behind that. And
right.
That's sort of like your third one here on that values and alignment. They wanted to be doing something more, so did I, but they were aligned to a very old school mentality from like a boss that they've had for like 15 years who quite liked the setup of being the one with the knowledge and the power, and everybody else being the minions.
And that's a great reminder. Part of aligning values and that really clear definition of roles, behaviors that align in those values.
Yeah,
it's to eliminate assumptions. I mean, as a leader, well, let's just say kind of as a manager, right? The task-oriented things that I say are most important are to crush roadblocks for your team, right? Get rid of the things that are going to block your team, and then eliminate any assumptions, which generally means you have to communicate impeccably well, because with a gap in communications, you create this kind of abyss of opportunity for assumptions to come in. And so like the example you just shared, the assumption that, oh, this is what we're supposed to do, but with a different leader in place, one of the most important things is to make sure that there's no assuming what roles, responsibilities, or value alignment is going to look like, but truly a collaborative and clear definition.
Yeah, and I think I was a severe shock to the system.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But I feel really pleased that I left a lovely maverick HR team going out.
Yes.
And the organisation was great for it as well, because they encouraged and developed the other managers. So one of the things I did was kind of matched up tiers of management with the HR team, so they could. So like I would do the directors, my deputy would do like the seniors, and then that person, just so they got used to actually managing comparative people, if that makes sense, and also the perspective of the HR team, because all of a sudden it wasn't I'm a boss, I go to the boss. It was like I'm going to that person who I've been told to treat as if it was the HR boss, because I would be like, I stand by anything that person says, which is a huge responsibility for them, which means in that situation meant a lot of development to get to that
right
point, but they had the potential but not the skills, because they've never been asked to use it. But when you
say,
I'm going to let you run, you will be responsible for that other department over there, and this is your whole department, you need to that's your job, you sort that out. And it's like, wow, but there's no such thing as only.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, you're a mini me with an authority.
Yeah.
So run off and be me, but in your own way.
Yeah, in your own way, with your own approach. And by the way, I trust you to make the decisions and do the thing. And, let's talk about them. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to share with you if I would have done it differently, how I might have approached it. But no, you're not in trouble for, making a decision. Do more of it.
It was interesting because the department went from the least trusted department to the most trusted department. I remember there was this kind of Christmas game, and you had like the managers. So all the managers were pitted against each other, and it was like one of those kind of, if I'm telling a lie, you have to tell a lie or tell the truth. And it was so funny because HR kept losing because nobody could lie very effectively, which I thought was actually made me feel quite good, because we just completely lost, because everyone goes, you're lying. Because and I just thought, that's really great, isn't it? HR is trusted, because none of us can lie to save our lives, which was really good.
That's great.
What I like here, my eyes just lit up when you said cognitive diversity. That sunk really deep for me, because I think one of the things that makes someone a great leader is their ability to think in multiple ways and to encourage multiple level thinking in people that are around. Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, absolutely. And also assembling a team that has different lived experiences, not just a diverse team from maybe what you could see in a photograph, because in a photograph that really doesn't tell you the capabilities of a person. It tells you what they look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I battle so regularly is the idea that we have diversity metrics that we're hitting and we're doing great. Because we have X number of people of color, so to speak, and X number of people of certain gender, so to speak, on our teams. And I say, cool. So talk to me about what your decision process looks like within the leadership sphere of those, within the individual contributor sphere of those, and then tell me what the impact has been to your culture and your outcomes in the business. And they have no idea. So they're not even measuring like all of the facets that diversity should and does, when it's done the right way, bring into an organization. It should be about a culture add, not a culture fit when you bring somebody in. And then it should be about what you do, what each person does to elevate the ability for the team to innovate, to collaborate, and deliver outcomes that were better than before. So this is where, particularly for a leader, not just understanding maybe your unconscious biases, or not just understanding where you operate in a confirmation bias type mindset most frequently, but or not just saying, hey, I've got a great way that I think and approach things, and so that's my system all the time, but to instead learn from as many sources as you can by being incredibly curious about your people, the makeup of them, their history, their background, and then for you, the different dynamics that are important to challenge, that break through any of your, like I mentioned, unconscious biases, or any of your kind of established mode or method of approaching situations. Because the more we can bring that cognitive diversity, or that ability to think through a challenge, a problem, come up with multiple potential solutions, and then work out what the kind of reverse engineer from those multiple different solutions what the process may look like with the people involved to achieve them. Suddenly you're able to move at a much faster pace. It's almost like you can control time, because deadlines don't feel as looming anymore. And trying to figure out how you assemble the right team isn't about looking at necessarily resumes, CVs, or what people have accomplished in their role, but starting to look at what their background is and how you can apply people in a different way. I think about sports metaphors in this particular regard, because there are many sporting teams where a person may, let's take football, for example, not American football, soccer, right? And so somebody may have been initially brought onto the team to play a defensive role, but they have an incredible history of being a forward and driving and scoring and just playing full length on the pitch. And so even though you may have brought them into the team for this specific role because that was the role you needed at the time, being willing to see and understand where as a competitive advantage for your team, you could shift them mid game on the pitch into a different role, and that gives a tactical advantage because the other team maybe is not expecting to have that happen. And so you can start to see how this can change how you game plan, how you approach solutions, and use them to deliver exceptional outcomes.
I totally agree, and because it was making me think of what I say to people when I'm doing some sort of leadership intervention, is that you need to know how people think and not to think about them in terms of their roles that they do. Because there's times when I want to create something new maybe, and I just can't. Somehow I'm just stuck, and I'll go to a friend of mine who's in a completely different industry, but what I value from him is that he can come up with really creative ideas. Like that's what he does, it's just like breathing. So I'll just throw out the problem and he'll go, and then and often it's like, it's a hybrid of some, it'll say something and I'll go, actually, if I take a bit of this and add a bit of this, and then that's like, I'm gone. Great. Or other times there's somebody I know who's a particular type of thinker and I'm like, I've just designed this, but I want you to be devil's advocate and listen. And even though, again, a completely different industry, because their ability to think is a certain way, it adds value.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And so that's a perfect point to kind of leveraging your network to be a value add for you as an individual leader. And as you're talking, it made me think back to this system that I had in place, and I had forgotten about this. I might have to write another book. No, but the system I had in place where with the last few teams that I led, anytime we came to kind of a decision point about how we were going to move forward as a group, I would then play the devil's advocate role, and essentially we would kind of, create a little trial, so to speak, to really test this idea here before we totally move forward with it. And so I would take the opposing position, my team would take the for position, and we would debate, if you will, with that mindset. And so for me, that was a skill that I grew up with a natural inclination to argue. However, and my folks would attest to that, no doubt. However, I did have to develop this ability to look at things that I believed in so firmly and things that were just, yes, I'm so behind it, but also develop that skill set to look and say, all right, let me look for every reason that this could fail, this could fall apart, this could unravel, it could be the wrong decision, it could cause people to lose their job. I mean, let me look at just all of those dynamics and really evaluate it. And so for me, while I could have done that on my own, by myself, as we were coming to decisions as a group, I wouldn't have been doing what I consider the most important part as a leader who pushes that envelope and empowers others. For me, it was all about teaching them that same process and skill to go through. So my team went through it together with me. I played devil's advocate. By the way, when there was a few times I'm out on holiday, and guess what? My team is having meetings, having to make decisions, and somebody pops up out of the group and says, all right, I'm the person. I'm going to do devil's advocate on this one. I didn't give direction. I didn't assign a person, but they knew that was our system and process that we went through. And so that's what happened as a team. And to me, again, that's the indicator where it's like, perfect. I can kind of sit back and watch now and then start to work on some other things, because these folks are getting it and they're progressing and they're doing the right thing. They're taking the right approach in a way that is about the people and about the process, ultimately to deliver that outcome or that profit, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, one of the things, socialized mavericks are very much devil's advocate. It's a role that they play, absolutely necessary. And I don't know about where you are, but certainly here, there's a huge reluctance to be devil's advocate in leadership teams across the country.
Oh, sure.
It's kind of one of those things that mavericks do, and kind of loved and hated for. And I think part of it is because some mavericks haven't yet learned how to be devil's advocate in a kind way. There's
a difference between argumentative or adding value through what I call constructive dissent.
Yes.
Right. And that ability to say, hey, listen, so I'm going to offer a different view and a different idea or different solution, or potentially even derail this whole entire thing with what I'm about to share here. But it's for the purpose of testing the true ability for this idea that we're talking about to make the impact we believe it will, or to be aware now that we have to course correct because it could set us on a trajectory that may be very difficult to recover from. And so that constructive dissent part, that part that breaks the silo, that gets rid of the groupthink, that's so valuable.
Yeah, I think it's extremely valuable and underscored. And I thought when something that you said triggered something for me, when I thought that's what socialized mavericks will do in their decision-making process. They don't look for confirmation bias. They look for non-confirmation. And I think until you explain to people that's your method of testing your ideas, people can think you're a bit disingenuous because you're fighting so hard for something you don't agree with. And then when you've got confirmation that, you've tested it out and you're right because all the kickback you're getting, supports your opinion, you go, yeah, you're right. And then you go, right, let's do this. And they're like, hang on a second, I thought you really cared. No, I don't really care about that. I'm just making sure I'm right. So you have to kind of explain this is a method of testing. A bit like you said about your advocacy courtroom setup. It's a similar sort of thing, except for your probably people are aren't aware they're complicit in that process.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So like for me, I as the leader of the team had the ability to set that up and be very clear about how we were doing this. But you're right. Like, so maybe you're not the leader of this team. It's a peer group. It's a group of, VPs, or it's a group of directors.
Yeah.
And you are not the president. And so you're in this room, and if that's your system and process, how then do you communicate effectively to the group? Maybe not waiting till you get in the room, but hopefully before that, to where they understand and know that why you do it and the value that you believe it brings to the process, so they can see it for the value that it adds, rather than see you as that jerk who just continually is argumentative but then agrees at the end.
Yeah, and I think I learned, lucky enough, on an early stage, that there is value in that authenticity, transparency, by saying, just so you know, this is why I think. I test ideas by rather than thinking that you're being vulnerable by admitting it. Because when you think you're being vulnerable, so you don't, you get set up as that's the person that always argues and disagrees. They're right pain in the neck. They might bring some great stuff, but it's painful to people who look at you and go, go on, what we're missing, Jude, what we're missing, because they know that you've come up with something. But they value it because it's not, it's not covert anymore. You're quite overt about it.
Agreed.
And that's part, probably, in your last one, of fostering community and collaboration, because you can't have community if there's no trust.
Yeah,
and sorry.
No, yeah. Go ahead.
I was saying you can't have collaboration if there's fear.
Yeah, really at the core of it, and this is probably in every leadership book on the history of the planet, that you have to build some sort of trust, right? And so at the core of this, all of this is about the idea that there's that alignment of personal values between people, and there's alignment of values in the organizational values, so that trust can exist. I mean, one of the greatest things that comes up year after year after year in employee satisfaction surveys is a mistrust of senior leadership, and that's generally because there's so much insulation between senior leadership and the bulk of an employee base, and mistrust of a direct supervisor, right? Those are the two things that just in so many companies come up over and over and over again. But then when you dig deeper and you start to look at some of the secondary questions that get asked, and you start to read in details, it's not that in most cases, it's not that the leader has done something so egregious to violate integrity or something else. It's that there's not a deliberate and intentional system set up to bring connections kind of offline. And so by offline, I don't mean go out of the office and go drink in a pub with all of your employees all the time. What I mean is creating a space where it's okay for you to be human. And if you see somebody in the supermarket, or if you see somebody at the park or whatever, who's maybe part of your team, that you connect in that personal space, in that kind of personal way. Why not? It also is about connecting people to other people. When you can see the benefit that people can bring to each other and kind of be that network connector, that actually has a trust transfer property to you. Even if you just introduce them, they get along, perfectly, and then you don't involve or interact in that connection any further. That still has a trust transfer to you. But really, at the core of it, it's just be human, be you. That's a little different than the authenticity thing. It's a little different than the vulnerability thing. It's kind of the mix of all of them together, but to be you, because that is something that when people just know that is who you are, and that you don't change based on scenario or circumstance, and that you have human qualities that make you fallible, that is something that people are drawn to, not repelled by, in the same way that they are by somebody who they question that trust. And that is a community breaker, right? Communities fall apart constantly, whether you think about a small household, or you think about an entire community where there's some, egregious break in values or mistrust that comes up, and then you fracture that collaboration in that community. I mean, we could, if we wanted to, talk politically, and I won't, but just even saying that word, I'm sure every listener can sit here and think of what's going on in whatever country you're listening, and you can think of political situations that have fractured households or societies as a result of decisions that are made or things that come up that break that community bond.
Exactly, I totally agree. I think this is probably a good place to stop, actually, Devin. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
And would you come back? Because I've had a fantastic conversation with
Oh, yeah, anytime. This has been fantastic.
you. Cool, thank you. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Devin as much as I enjoyed having it. If you'd like to learn more about Mavericks and leadership, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, apply to join the Maverick Paradox exclusive Facebook group. To learn all about Mavericks, go to my website, maverickparadox.com. To learn about Mavericks at work, go to my website, maverickparadox.co.uk. Find out how willful independence can ultimately change all our futures. Thanks again, and see you soon.